The moment that we heard that Diana, Princess of Wales, had been killed in a car crash in Paris, along with her partner, Dodi Al-Fayed.
The outpouring of grief that followed was testament to the huge impact Diana had on the world and how,
in the blink of an eye, Princess Diana's life was tragically cut short, leaving the world in shock. But what if the very media that adored her also played a role in her untimely death? A newly resurfaced photograph has reopened old wounds, shedding light on the relentless press intrusion she endured in her final years. This image doesn't just tell a story of fame.
Yes, in the morning, the paparazzi were generally sleeping. They had a bit of a routine at night. They'd go in the bars and drink, and then, so we knew in the mornings we could chat, and I think she came down. She must have been an early morning person. She'd come down and...
It reveals the dark side of the chase, the price of obsession, and the haunting truth that Diana, the beloved princess, was never truly free. This photograph, which has recently emerged into the public domain, doesn't offer any groundbreaking revelations about the events of the past, nor does it challenge the official records that exist. Instead, it adds an additional layer of context to our understanding of Diana's final days. It helps us to more clearly see the invasive and relentless nature of the press coverage that surrounded her at the time. The image itself is not a smoking gun that could solve the mystery of the Paris crash, nor is it an answer to the question of what caused it. But it does bring into sharper focus the intense and often intrusive media environment that Diana had to navigate in the months before her tragic death. The timing of this resurfaced image, coinciding with the rediscovery of other key pieces of Diana's legacy, makes it even more significant. Recently, a time capsule from 1991 was unearthed at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. This time capsule, buried by Diana herself during her time as the hospital's president, contained various items reflecting the culture and personal interests of the early 90s. Inside, items such as a Casio pocket television, a passport, a Kylie Minogue cassette, and a copy of the Sunday Times from the day it was buried were found. Most notably, a photograph of Diana herself was included, offering a more intimate view of the woman behind the public persona. This time capsule serves as a reminder of the personal side of Diana, beyond her fame as the most photographed woman in the world. Alongside the discovery of the time capsule, another significant piece of Diana's legacy resurfaced recently: a childhood photograph shared by her brother, Charles Spencer. The photograph, which shows Diana and her brother standing by the pool at Park House in Sandringham, offers a rare and personal glimpse into her life before the public eye. In the caption, Charles Spencer reflected on their childhood, recalling their swimming lessons with their strict instructor, Mrs. Lansdowne. It was a nostalgic and poignant moment, offering a view of Diana as a young girl, far removed from the royal duties and media attention that would come later. While these two stories, the time capsule and the childhood photograph, may seem unrelated to the resurfaced photograph from Diana's final months, they serve as important counterpoints. They remind us of Diana's humanity and her role as a mother, sister, and advocate before she became the global figure that we remember today. They provide a context that is often overshadowed by the intense scrutiny of her life in the public eye. Diana, like so many other individuals, had a life that existed outside the glare of the media, and these personal stories offer us a chance to reconnect with her as a person, rather than just as a royal icon. The resurfaced photograph that is at the heart of today's conversation, however, shifts the focus back to the last years of Diana's life, a time when she was increasingly caught in the crosshairs of the media. This photograph does not provide new evidence or revelations about her death, but it sheds light on the environment that surrounded her during this tumultuous period. It shows just how close the press were allowed to get to her, illustrating the relentless pursuit of every aspect of her life. At this point in time, the media had become obsessed with Diana, and the line between public interest and private intrusion had all but disappeared. It is crucial to understand the broader context of the media environment in which this photograph was taken. In the 1990s, British tabloids had perfected a model that prioritized scandal over substance, With figures like Rupert Murdoch reshaping the tabloid landscape in the 1970s and 80s, the focus shifted from serious political reporting to sensationalized personal stories about celebrities, royalty, and public figures. This shift was particularly evident in the late 80s and early 90s, when the British tabloids began to realize just how profitable stories about Diana could be. The public's fascination with her private life created a demand for more photographs, more intimate glimpses into her day-to-day existence. As the media became more obsessed with Diana, paparazzi photographers recognized the potential to make substantial sums by capturing exclusive images of her. Diana, often referred to as the Princess of Sales within newsrooms, was the subject of constant attention. Every move she made was watched, tracked, and photographed. This was a time before the ubiquity of smartphones and social media, when photographers would physically chase down their targets, often putting themselves and their subjects in harm's way for the sake of a single photograph. The resulting images could fetch staggering sums, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds, making Diana an almost insatiable commodity in the press market. This culture of invasive media coverage is a key aspect of the resurfaced photograph. It serves as a reminder of how intense the press attention was during this period, and how Diana was relentlessly pursued by photographers who saw her as little more than a product to be sold. The photograph helps us understand the physical nature of this pursuit, how close the cameras were allowed to get, how the press would follow her to the ends of the earth to capture an image. It's a window into a time when privacy was no longer a right, but a luxury few public figures could afford. The relationship between Diana and the press was complicated. While she had long been aware of the media's power, she also used the press to advance causes close to her heart. Her work with AIDS patients, her advocacy for mental health awareness, and her efforts to raise the profile of landmine victims all benefited from the media's attention. Yet, as this photograph illustrates, the media's involvement often came with a cost. Her privacy, her safety, and ultimately her peace of mind. The questions raised by this resurfaced photograph aren't just about Diana herself, but about the broader media culture that she was caught up in. How far should the press be allowed to go in their pursuit of stories? How much is too much when it comes to public interest? And what does it mean for a person's humanity when their every move is scrutinized in such a relentless manner? These questions remain as relevant today as they were in Diana's time, particularly as the media landscape continues to evolve with the advent of digital platforms and social media. As we reflect on the impact of this photograph, it's important to remember that it's not just about Diana's final months. It's about understanding the complex relationship between public figures and the media, and the consequences of an unchecked pursuit of fame. Diana's story serves as a cautionary tale, not just for celebrities, but for all of us, reminding us of the fine line between public interest and private intrusion. The resurfaced photograph does not provide all the answers, but it forces us to ask the right questions, questions that are still relevant as we continue to grapple with the ethical implications of media coverage today. In recent weeks, two significant pieces of Princess Diana's legacy have resurfaced, shedding light on aspects of her life that often go unnoticed amidst the tabloid frenzy that surrounded her. The first was the discovery of a time capsule buried by Diana in 1991, a rare glimpse into her personal connection with Great Ormond Street Hospital. The second was a rare childhood photograph shared by her brother, Charles Spencer, offering the world a momentary glimpse of Diana before she became a global icon. These two stories, seemingly unrelated, serve as powerful counterpoints to the constant media attention that Diana faced in her final years, and they offer us an opportunity to reflect on her life outside the relentless glare of the paparazzi. The time capsule, which was unearthed during construction work at the hospital, contained a snapshot of life in the early 90s. Inside the lead-encased wooden box, items such as a Casio pocket television, a passport, a Kylie Minogue cassette, a copy of the Sunday Times from the day the capsule was sealed, and, perhaps most poignantly, a photograph of Diana herself were found. These objects, carefully curated with the help of children who had won a Blue Peter competition, act as a time machine, transporting us back to a moment in time when Diana was actively engaged in public service, long before the media spectacle that would come to define her life. What makes this discovery particularly significant is not just the physical items it contained, but what it represents. Diana's involvement with Great Ormond Street Hospital was hands-on, not merely ceremonial. As the hospital's president, she was deeply committed to the work being done there, and her decision to bury a time capsule was not a publicity stunt. It was a thoughtful gesture, a statement that a Princess of Wales should serve as a bridge between the public and the good work happening behind the walls of institutions like the hospital. This was an example of Diana using her position to bring attention to causes that mattered, to highlight the importance of children's health, and to make a tangible contribution to society that extended beyond her royal duties. The symbolism of the time capsule is not lost on those who recognize the historical significance of such gestures. In 1872, Alexandra of Denmark, another Princess of Wales who would later become queen, buried a time capsule at the same hospital. However, her message to the future was never dug up. Diana's, by contrast, was discovered by chance, an accident made possible by the construction work that was being done to build a new children's cancer center. This moment, in which a piece of Diana's legacy was unexpectedly unearthed, feels less like an event tied to monarchy and more like one grounded in memory. It's a quiet reminder that legacy can travel through gestures, not just titles. It's a reminder that Diana was not just a figurehead. She was an active participant in the causes she championed, often connecting with people in ways that were both personal and profound. The time capsule is a testament to Diana's desire to be remembered for her actions, not just her royal status. She wanted to be seen as more than just a princess. She wanted to be remembered for the real work she did, for the lives she touched, and for the moments that made her more than a symbol. The items inside the capsule, from the Casio television to the photograph of Diana, represent a personal connection to the people she served, especially the children who were part of the hospital's care. These items, now carefully preserved, serve as physical markers of her impact and offer us a chance to reflect on the kind of legacy she hoped to leave behind. Alongside the time capsule, a rare childhood photograph of Diana shared by her brother Charles Spencer offers another layer of understanding about her life. The photograph, which shows Diana and her brother standing by the pool at Park House in Sandringham, presents a side of her that is seldom seen. In the picture, Diana is a child, grinning with her brother, both of them proudly displaying their swimming badges. This image, which contrasts sharply with the heavily stylized, posed images that we often associate with her later life, is a reminder that Diana was once just a regular person. She wasn't always a princess, and her life wasn't always under the constant scrutiny of the press. She had a childhood, a family, and experiences that shaped her long before she became the subject of tabloid obsession. The caption accompanying the photograph, in which Charles Spencer recalls their swimming instructor, Mrs. Lansdowne, paints a picture of a more ordinary, everyday childhood. The photograph shows two children, not royal figures, enjoying a simple moment of joy. This rare glimpse into Diana's early life provides a stark contrast to the image of the woman the world came to know. Before the wedding was watched by millions and the media circus that followed, Diana was just a girl who earned swimming badges and spent time with her brother at the family estate. For a brief moment, social media allowed us to see her not as a global icon, but as a regular sibling, one who laughed, played, and had experiences far removed from the spotlight. This photograph also serves to humanize Diana in a way that the public often forgets. It reminds us that she was not just a princess, but a person who grew up with the same childhood experiences and emotions as anyone else. The endless media coverage that followed her throughout her life often obscured this fact, focusing instead on the image of the glamorous, tragic princess. The photograph shared by her brother provides a welcome shift in perspective, allowing us to see Diana as a young girl before the pressures of public life took hold. It is a small but significant reminder of her humanity, something that is often overshadowed by the relentless focus on her public persona. These two stories, the time capsule and the childhood photograph, serve as powerful reminders of the life that Diana led before the world became obsessed with her. They offer us a glimpse into her personal world, one that was defined by more than just royal duties and media attention. The time capsule, buried as a token of her commitment to children's health, and the childhood photograph, which shows her as a normal, happy child. Both help us understand that Diana's legacy was not just about the headlines. It was about the real human connections she made along the way. In the context of the resurfaced photograph from Diana's final years, these stories provide a crucial counterpoint. They remind us that Diana's life was not just a series of media moments. It was also about the relationships she built, the causes she championed, and the love she had for her family. The time capsule and the childhood photograph help us to reconnect with Diana as a person, not just an icon, and they offer us a chance to reflect on the more intimate, private moments that defined her. It's a reminder that her legacy was not just shaped by the media frenzy, but by the quiet, thoughtful actions she took to make a difference in the world. These two pieces of Diana's legacy also serve as a stark contrast to the relentless media culture that surrounded her in her final years. While the press was consumed with every detail of her life, from her relationships to her appearance, Diana was also engaged in meaningful work behind the scenes. The time capsule, with its carefully selected items, speaks to her commitment to children's health, while the childhood photograph speaks to the normalcy she sought to maintain in a life that was anything but ordinary. These moments, though fleeting, offer us a window into a side of Diana that is often overlooked in favor of the more sensational aspects of her story. As we reflect on these two stories, it's important to remember that Diana's legacy is not just about the headlines. It's about the impact she had on the lives of those she touched, and the way she used her platform to bring attention to important causes. The time capsule and the childhood photograph help us to remember Diana as she truly was, a mother, a sister, and a woman who used her position to make a difference. These stories remind us that her legacy was shaped by more than just the press. It was shaped by her humanity, her compassion, and her commitment to making the world a better place. The resurfaced photograph of Princess Diana, tied to her final months, has sparked renewed discussion about the intense media environment that surrounded her. This image, which surfaced recently, does not provide any new forensic revelations about the tragic crash in Paris, nor does it challenge the conclusions of the inquest into her death. However, what this photograph does is offer a clearer understanding of the environment that Diana was living in during this period, especially in relation to the press and the constant scrutiny she faced. The photograph does not rewrite history, but it sharpens our perception of the final years of her life, allowing us to better understand just how invasive and relentless the media coverage had become. The photograph serves as a powerful reminder of the press's presence in Diana's life during the 1990s. By this time, the media had become obsessed with her every move, and the boundaries between public and private life had virtually collapsed. The image shows just how close photographers were allowed to get to her, how the line between public interest and private intrusion had blurred. In the mid-1990s, British tabloids were at the height of their power, prioritizing sensational stories over substantive reporting. The media's fixation on Diana's personal life had reached a fever pitch, and the public's insatiable demand for images of her led to the rise of paparazzi, who would stop at nothing to capture the perfect shot. The photograph itself is not a single frame that changes the course of history. It is not a smoking gun, nor does it answer the questions about what happened on that fateful night in Paris. Instead, it adds to the growing body of evidence that Diana's final years were marked by an overwhelming and invasive press presence. For those who grew up in the era of smartphones and social media, it might be difficult to fully grasp the physical nature of media coverage in those days. The paparazzi didn't just rely on cameras with lenses. They physically chased their subjects, often putting themselves and others at risk in the pursuit of a photograph. This is something that the resurfaced photograph helps us understand. It is a glimpse into a time when photographers were not just documenting a person's life, but actively engaging in a pursuit, a chase that often led to dangerous and reckless behavior. In the 1990s, British tabloids were perfected in their ability to turn the private lives of public figures into profit. At the heart of this transformation was the realization that a photograph of Princess Diana could sell for extraordinary amounts of money. Her image was coveted, and the public's appetite for exclusive shots was insatiable. These photographs were no longer just pieces of news. They were commodities, valuable assets in the competitive media marketplace. In many ways, Diana had become the ultimate product. Her every move a business opportunity for the tabloids. Editors in newsrooms across the UK began referring to Diana as the Princess of Sales, a figure whose personal life was more profitable than the most serious political debates. The paparazzi, understanding the economic power of these images, became relentless in their pursuit of her, often crossing moral and ethical lines to secure the perfect shot. This culture of media intrusion reached its apex in the mid-1990s, as the press and the paparazzi realized that the market for Diana's image was unending. Grainy pictures of her on holiday, candid shots of her leaving a gym. These were the kinds of images that sold, the ones that captured the essence of Diana's private life. A single photograph could fetch hundreds of thousands of pounds, turning ordinary moments into highly valuable commodities. In 1993, Diana herself won damages from Mirror Group after she was secretly photographed in a gym, highlighting the limits of legal protections when the market for these images was so insatiable. This settlement, however, did little to stem the tide of media intrusion. If anything, it exposed just how powerless the legal system was to prevent the invasion of privacy when the market was hungry for more. A telling example of this relentless pursuit came in 1994, when two photographers, Mark Saunders and Glenn Harvey, received a tip-off that Diana had been spotted in Chelsea Harbor. Without hesitation, they rushed to the scene and began trailing Diana's car as it made its way toward Kensington Palace. The chase was frenetic, involving red lights, illegal maneuvers, and a complete disregard for safety. The photographs that resulted showed Diana driving with art dealer Oliver Hoare, and they made their way into the tabloids. The photographs, though revealing, also served to highlight how far the press had gone to blur the lines between private and public life. In this instance, the paparazzi not only followed Diana through the streets, but also put her safety at risk in the process. The public, too, was complicit in this culture. The tabloids had conditioned people to treat Diana's every move as public property, as something that belonged to the masses. In this environment, it became increasingly difficult to distinguish between the woman and the media construct that had been created around her. Every image, every story, and every headline contributed to this larger-than-life persona that Diana could never escape. The resurfaced photograph from this period helps us see just how intense and all-encompassing this attention was. It is a snapshot of a time when Diana's personal space was constantly violated, when the line between the person and the public figure was constantly shifting. This type of media culture is not something that emerged suddenly. It had been building for years. In the 1980s and 1990s, British tabloids, under the direction of figures like Rupert Murdoch, had shifted the focus away from political reporting to sensationalized stories about celebrities and royals. The media had learned that public interest in the personal lives of celebrities was a surefire way to boost circulation and sell advertising. By the late 1980s, tabloids like the News of the World had perfected the art of turning the private lives of public figures into headlines. Diana, caught in the crossfire of this new media landscape, became both a victim and a product of this transformation. The resurfaced photograph is a potent reminder of this media culture, illustrating the lengths to which the press would go to capture every moment of Diana's life. It's a moment frozen in time that highlights the aggressive tactics used by the paparazzi and the invasion of privacy that became the norm. This culture, which had taken root in the 1980s and 1990s, only grew more intense in the years leading up to her death. In the weeks before the Paris crash, Diana had already begun to retreat from the public eye, seeking a life of greater privacy and normalcy. But, as the photograph reveals, that privacy was always under siege as the cameras continued to close in on her. The media's relentless pursuit of Diana was not without consequences. As her life became a spectacle, the boundaries between public interest and private suffering continued to erode. In 1997, Diana's tragic death in Paris, caused by a high-speed car crash while being pursued by paparazzi, brought the issue of press intrusion into stark focus. The crash itself was the result of a combination of factors, including the grossly negligent driving of Henri Paul, the driver of the Mercedes, who was found to be intoxicated, and the simultaneous pursuit by photographers. While the inquest into Diana's death did not place blame on the photographers directly, it highlighted how dangerous and irresponsible the media's actions had been in the final moments of her life. Diana's death was a watershed moment, both for the British public and for the media. It forced the nation to confront the consequences of the media's obsession with her, and it sparked widespread debate about the ethics of press coverage. In the wake of the crash, public opinion about the media shifted dramatically. The press was held accountable for its role in creating the environment that led to Diana's death, and there was a broader recognition of the need for greater privacy protections for public figures. The Press Complaints Commission, in the wake of the tragedy, tightened its guidelines and introduced new rules to prevent the use of long lenses to photograph people in private spaces. These changes, though important, were not a permanent solution. As Diana's sons, William and Harry, grew up, they too found themselves targeted by the media, as photographers staked out their every move. Yet, despite the ongoing pressure, they were better equipped to push back against the media's intrusions, often using legal channels to protect their privacy. The legacy of Princess Diana, with its deeply intertwined elements of royalty, tragedy, and media obsession, continues to shape public consciousness decades after her death. The resurfaced photograph of Diana from the mid-1990s is just the latest reminder of how relentlessly the media pursued her, an intrusion that would ultimately contribute to her untimely demise in 1997. This photograph, which has resurfaced amid ongoing discussions of Diana's life and legacy, is a stark reminder of the invasive environment she lived in during her final years. It doesn't change the details of her death, but reinforces the reason why her story still resonates today, and why the lessons learned from it continue to influence the media landscape and public figures alike. Diana's tragic passing on August 31st, 1997, after a car crash in Paris, is still felt across the world. The loss was sudden and deeply emotional for millions, not just in the United Kingdom, but globally. Diana's connection with people transcended her royal status, and it was her genuine empathy, her ability to connect with the common person, that made her so beloved. However, the circumstances surrounding her death, especially the chase by the paparazzi leading up to the crash, have forever linked her legacy to the media's intrusive and exploitative behavior. This fresh photograph of Diana, surfacing after all these years, reminds us that her death was not just a tragic accident. It was the result of a media environment that had become so fixated on her every move that it blurred the lines between respect for her privacy and the public's insatiable thirst for sensational images. The resurfaced photograph serves as a powerful prompt to reevaluate the impact of the media on Diana's life, especially during the period leading up to her death. The heightened press attention she endured in the mid-1990s was not just a passive observation of her public life, it was an active and relentless pursuit. In this context, the image becomes not just a historical artifact, but a reflection of how far the media had gone in violating her privacy. This was a time when tabloid newspapers, with their sensationalized headlines, were driven by the financial success of celebrity scandals. The paparazzi, understanding the value of a photograph of Diana, followed her relentlessly, often using dangerous and unethical tactics to capture the perfect shot. Diana, often referred to as the Princess of Sales by media insiders, had become the subject of a market-driven media system that reduced her life to a commodity. The most troubling aspect of this is the way the public and the media, together, created an environment in which privacy was no longer a right, but a luxury. Diana's every move was documented, and even her most private moments, such as her relationships, her visits to the gym, and her holidays, were pursued by photographers, often without any regard for her wishes or safety. While the public consumed these images with veracity, few questioned the ethics behind such invasive reporting. The paparazzi were paid handsomely for photographs of Diana, and the tabloids capitalized on this, turning her personal struggles, her relationships, and even her vulnerability into stories that sold newspapers. The resurfaced photograph reminds us of just how close the cameras were allowed to get to her, and how the proximity of the press had escalated to the point where the boundaries between public interest and private suffering were completely eroded. In the years following Diana's death, public opinion about the media's role in her life shifted dramatically. The outpouring of grief after her passing exposed the deep emotional connection people had with her, and many questioned the role the press had played in shaping her image and, ultimately, contributing to her death. The crash in Paris, caused by a combination of the reckless driving of the chauffeur, Henri Paul, and the aggressive pursuit by the paparazzi, exposed the dangers of the media culture that had surrounded Diana. While the inquest concluded that the crash was caused by negligent driving and the simultaneous pursuit by the paparazzi, the wider issue remained. The paparazzi had contributed to an environment that endangered Diana's safety. The media's relentless chase, driven by the financial reward of exclusive images, played a significant role in creating the conditions that led to her death. In the aftermath of Diana's death, several changes were made to improve the ethical standards of the press. The Press Complaints Commission, for example, tightened its regulations, banning the use of long-lens cameras to capture images of people in private spaces. The Protection from Harassment Act, which had only just been passed months before her death, was invoked to prevent further media intrusion. These changes were not a complete solution, but they marked the beginning of a shift in the way the media treated public figures. The recognition of the dangers posed by relentless press coverage and the potential harm caused to both public figures and ordinary citizens led to more stringent rules governing media behavior. However, the legacy of Diana's death and the ethical lessons learned have not always been fully embraced. As her sons, William and Harry, grew older, they too became targets of the media, their personal lives subject to the same scrutiny and exploitation that Diana had endured. The press continued to chase stories about their relationships, their private moments, and their interactions with their families. While both William and Harry have used legal means to push back against press intrusion, they too have found themselves caught in the cycle of media attention. In the case of William, his relationship with Kate Middleton became a tabloid beat, with photographers staking out their vacations and personal events. For Harry, his personal struggles, such as the highly publicized incident involving a Nazi costume, were splashed across the front pages. These moments, though not as tragic as their mother's, are reflective of the media's continued tendency to treat public figures as commodities, their lives available for sale to the highest bidder. The rise of digital media and the shift from print to online news has only amplified this trend. Websites like Mail Online have taken the tabloid culture to a new level, using algorithms and social media platforms to fuel the public's insatiable appetite for gossip and scandal. The public's thirst for celebrity content has not only increased in volume, but has also become more instant, with the speed of information dissemination online, making it harder for public figures to maintain any semblance of privacy. The rise of clickbait headlines, sensationalized stories, and paparazzi-driven content has created a new kind of media ecosystem where every moment, every gesture, and every piece of personal information is fair game for public consumption. Diana's legacy continues to haunt this new media environment, with the lessons of her life and death still reverberating today. As new generations of public figures, including celebrities, politicians, and members of the royal family, step into the spotlight, they face the same challenges Diana did, living their lives under the constant scrutiny of the media. For some, the pressure becomes unbearable, leading to mental health struggles, anxiety, and a loss of self-identity. The resurfaced photograph of Diana serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of media obsession, offering a window into a life that was forever shaped by the pursuit of profit through personal tragedy. Diana's legacy is not just about the public image she cultivated, but also about the empathy she demonstrated and the causes she championed. She didn't simply attend charity events. She used her platform to make a real difference in the lives of those who were often forgotten by society. Her work with AIDS patients, her advocacy for mental health, and her efforts to bring attention to landmine victims were groundbreaking. She used her fame to draw attention to issues that were often ignored, showing that royalty could be a force for good in the world. But even in her humanitarian efforts, Diana was still very much a part of the media machine. Every visit, every handshake, and every moment of her work with charitable organizations was captured by photographers and documented by the press. The resurfaced photograph reminds us that, despite the profound impact Diana had on the world, she was still subject to the same forces that contributed to her pain and ultimately her death. It forces us to confront the reality that the chase for sensational stories often overshadows the humanity of the people involved. Diana's legacy, shaped by both her public life and her private suffering, remains a complex one, and the resurfaced photograph serves as a call to remember the human cost of fame. The lesson from Diana's story is not just about the media's power, but also about the responsibility that comes with it. If the photograph serves as a prompt for reflection on how we treat public figures and how the media operates, then it will have done more than simply stir up old memories. It will have forced a reckoning with the ethics of media coverage, ensuring that Diana's legacy is not forgotten in the rush to chase the next big story.